Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Hasna Widya from grade 1 PAI with NIM 22411040219. Here, I will explain about four materials, namely the first, about the basic concept of Islamic moderation education. The second is about the normative basis of Islamic moderation education. The three, historical foundation of Islamic moderation education. The four, principle of Islamic moderation in their relevance to Maqasid Sharia. For an explanation of the first material, namely about Islamic moderation education. Islamic moderation education is education that teaches the principles of Islamic moderation with an attitude of taking the middle path, such as the value of moderation in tolerance. For an explanation of the materials, namely about Islamic moderation education. Education is a learning process, knowledge carried out by a person or group of people passed down from generation to generation through learning, teaching, research, and training. Then, the notion of Islamic moderation is an attitude which always prioritizes and takes the middle ground in dealing with different attitudes and thoughts in a society. Definition of moderation. Moderation in the KBBI means the avoidance of violence, where this word is an absorption word from the word moderate, namely the attitude of avoiding extreme attitudes and prioritizing the middle way. Furthermore, the explanation of the second point of the first material is the background of the emergence of the Islamic moderation thought movement. In the background, a rational approach emerged that led to the denial of the Quran and Sunnah, so that contemporary scholars introduced the concept of Islamic moderation. Modern Muslim scholars are very concerned when discussing Islamic education information born of Muslim and non-Muslim scholars. Islamic thought has caused controversy in the body of contemporary Muslims, especially some Muslim scholars who are influenced by the style of thinkers from the West who are free and absolute rationalists when discussing Islam. Some Muslim scholars would take this way and use the Western philosophical thinking approach have influenced educated people. For example, Indonesian students and scholars. This rational and logical approach in Islam has given birth to many paradoxes or shubhat when understanding Islam, causing systematic denial of the main source of Islam law, namely the Quran and Sunnah. On the other hand, some scholars and Muslims have brought up textual Zahriyah and fundamental Usuliyah texts and approach in understanding Islamic source are the texts of the proposition and nusus, without paying attention to the existence of Maqasid Sharia and illat dalil as well as ijma and opinion. Madhib has given birth to an understanding that is intolerant of difference, resulting in the weakness of ukhuwah, the vulnerability of hostility, and the loss of unity and strength of the ummah. So that contemporary scholars such as Muhammad Rashid Ridho, Hasan al-Banna, Mahmud Saltot, Muhammad Abu Zahroh, Yusuf al-Qardawi, Wahbah Az-Zuhaili, and others, introduced the character of teaching and Muslims who are moderate and fair wasatiyah. The third point of this material is about the purpose of moderation. The purpose of moderation is to avoid radicalism and take the middle ground when there are disputes in society. It is hoped that with this understanding of moderation, there can be a balance in Islam between extreme and liberal, so that the realization of Islam that is rahmatan lil alamin. Then, the fourth point of this material is about analyzing student potential. Analysis Analysis of students' potential regarding the implementation of Islamic moderation follows, which emphasize the students instill moderate attitudes such as tolerance and non-discrimination, mutual respect, being friendly, then so the student can know more about understanding moderate Islam. Students generally agree with the idea Islamic moderation, especially that which is instilled in PAI course learning. Furthermore, the second material is about the normative foundation of Islamic moderation education. There are three points that will be discussed here. From the first point, regarding the meaning of the normative basics. The definition of a normative basic is a solid foundation or footing in order to hold fast to the provisions as a measure of checking something. Foundation is the most solid foundation on which something is built. To make something stand firm, it requires a basis or footing which in the context of the normative basis of the footing is referred to as the foundation. Proposition in a group area they have the aim of controlling good attitudes or character. This normative is sticking to the rules or norms. So the normative basis is a solid basis or footing on holding fast to the provisions as a benchmark for judging something. The second point is about the legal search of the normative foundation of Islamic moderation education contained in the Quran and Hadith. In the Quran, it is contained in Quran Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 143, which means, and similarly, we have made you, Muslim, a middle community, so that you are witness of these humans and that the messengers Muhammad is a witness of her deeds you. We did not make the Qiblat formerly your direction to him except that we may know who follows the messengers and who turn back. Indeed, changing the Qiblat is very heavy, except for those who have been guided by Allah. And Allah will not waste your fight. Allah is most gracious, most merciful to His servants. Al-Baqarah 143. Then, in the Hadith riwayat Bukhari, from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said, "The Messenger of Allah said, a person's deed will never save him." They asked, "You too, a messenger of Allah?" He replied, "So am I, unless Allah bestows His mercy. So correct your intentions, but do not overdo it in charity so that it causes boredom. Hasten in the morning and afternoon. Help it with the end of the night. Walk in the middle. Walk in the middle so that you reach your goal." 2. Hadis riwayat Ahmad, Baihaqi, and Al-Hakim. From Buraidiyah al-Islami said, "One day I went out for an errand. Suddenly, the Holy Prophet walked in the front of me. Then he followed me, and he walked together. At the time, we found a man who was praying, and he bowed a lot and prostrated. The Prophet said, 'Do you see him as a person who is blessed?' Suicide, Allah and His Messenger know best." He removed my hand from his hand. Then he took his hand and straightened it, and raised both of them and said, "You should follow the instruction in the middle." The repeat is 3 times, because indeed, who is excessive in religion he will overcome. Hadis riwayat Muslim. Jabir bin Samurah said, "I have prayed with the Prophet many times, and I found his prayer in the middle and his sermon also in the middle." Then hadis riwayat Nasa'i and Ibnu Majah. Ibnu Abbas said, "The Messenger of Allah said, a people avoid exaggeration exceeding limits, because the previous people perished because of the attitudes of transgressing in religions." 'Then the third point is about the thoughts or opinions of classical and contemporary scholars in Islamic moderation education. 1. Imam Ibn Jarir at-Tabari, who argues the Wasatiyah Muslim are moderate Muslim because they are in the middle position in all religions. They are not an extreme group that is excessive like the extreme attitude of Christians with the teaching of Islam. His monk who rejects the world and his nature as a human being. Muslims are also not like free and Nicolaitans, Jews who change the books of Allah, kill the prophets, lead to good and disbelieve in him. However, Muslims are people who take the middle and balanced path in religions, so it is for this reason that Allah calls them moderate people. 2. Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. He argues in his work called Ihya Ulumuddin, when discussing the attitude of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ towards the world in the Zuhud chapter. Al-Ghazali said that the companions did not work in the world for the world, but for religions. The companions did not accept and reject the world as a whole or absolutely, so that they are not extreme in refusing and accepting, but they behave between the two in a balanced way. There is justice and the middle between the two sides. Al-Ghazali saw The ideal life in actualizing the teaching of Islam is by way of middle, balance and just or proportional between the world and the hereafter, between spiritual and physical, and between material and spiritual. Although Al-Ghazali is known for his Sufism views and his Zuhud life, he still acknowledges and believes that the most perfect way of life, and in accordance with the nature of Islamic teaching based on the Quran and As-Sunnah, and the life model of the righteous Salaf, is the direction of wasat hil, moderate, not manhaji khulu or extreme, or tatil or deep Islamic teachings. 3. Imam al-Qurtubi. According to him, that the Wasatan people are the just and the best people because the best being is the most just. Al-Qurtubi explained that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants Muslims to be moderate, fierce, and most intelligent people. That Muslims must be people who are always in a middle and moderate position, not in an extreme or excessive position. Then, the explanation of the next material about the historical basis of Islamic moderation education. In this material, there will be 4 discussion points. The first is about understanding the historical basis of the Islamic moderation. Historical basis is the basis or footing on even that actually happened and then use it as the basis for the application of Islamic moderation. The first is about understanding the historical basis of the Islamic moderation. Linguistically, the foundation means the pedestal, the base or the base. So the foundation is the place to rest on the benchmark or the base of the footing. In the General Indonesian Dictionary, WJS Purwadaminta said that history or history is events and events that actually happened in the past or important events that actually happened. So, the historical basis of Islamic moderation is an event or event that really happened which was used as the basis for the application of Islamic moderation. The second point is about the event of moderation in the Nabawiyah Sirah. A. Dialogue of the Prophet with friends. The story recorded by the Aisha tells of 3 friends who claim to have practiced their religions using good. Each of the 3 friends admitted to being diligent in fasting until they did not break their fast, always pray at night until never sleep, and not getting married for fear of disturbing for worship. The Prophet at the time emphasized that I am the best among you, because the Prophet fasted and broke his fast, prayed at night and slept, and got married. In the story, the Prophet gave the behavior of Wasatiyah that is not excessive in religions. The Prophet diligently fasted and broke his fast, not in harmony with his friends who did not break his fast. This is precisely the behavior of hyperbola in religions, which of course is not in sense using the principle of Islamic moderation. So, what the Prophet did was in line with the use of God's commandment which condemn extreme behavior, namely, among others things, that it was stopped for ghulu, as Quran Surah An-Nisa 17. Sorry, Quran Surah An-Nisa 171. This shows that Islam is very wasatiyah, does not want to burden its people. Islam provides a lot of facilities so that its people can carry out as well as possible. Not hyperbole to worship, but also not piloting. Then, the story of the Prophet and the Bedouin. In the time of the Prophet, there was an Arabi who came to the mosque and then urinated in front of his friends. At the time, the friends were angry, but the Prophet prevented his from letting the person defected until it was finished. After that, Arabi was summoned and given advice that this area is God's dwelling place, a holy place, as a result they should not be unclean. Meanwhile, the friends who were asked to clean the unclean place with water until they were holy and clean again. These Bedouins are not residents of Medina. If the people of Medina did this, of course the Prophet ﷺ would behave differently, but the Prophet ﷺ behaved with people like this according to his ignorant situation and did not understand his religion's beliefs. The behavior shown by the Prophet is an attitude of tolerance in religion which as a part comes from the application of moderation. Then, for the third point about the event of the implementation of Islamic moderation during the Khulafa ar-Rashidin. 1. The story of Umar and Christian. 2. The story of Umar and the Jewish beggar. 1. The story of Umar and the Christian. Furthermore, for the third point about the event of the implementation of Islamic moderation during the Khulafa Rashidin period, Umar was once involved in alliance agreement with Christians in Jerusalem. At the time, the territory of Aliyah or Jerusalem was already in the hands of Muslims. The handover of the city case from Patriarch Sophronius to Umar was carried out with diplomatic efforts and without coercion. To repay the goodwill of Orthodox Christian religion leaders, Umar demonstrated and offered a peace treaty. The agreement contained an agreement given by Umar to maintain security, the right to life, property rights, crunch buildings, their crosses, as well as weak people, healthy people, and all followers of religions. The agreement, which is also called the Declaration of Al-Uhda al-Umariyah, was carried out of the Qiyamah crunch between Caliph Umar bin Khattab and Patriarch Sophronius. The agreement is also a message to the Muslim that all must respect the rights of their chieftains there. A unique story that happened after the agreement was agreed. When it came time for prayer, Umar asked Patriarch Sophronius where he called to pray. Patriarch Supernius invited Umar to pray in the crunch, but Umar refused. He then came out of the crunch and prayed of their status. Umar revealed the reason for not wanting to pray in the crunch, Qiyamah crunch, in a sacred area for Orthodox Christians. Christian in Jerusalem. If Umar prays at the crunch, then the Muslim troops can interpret the Onday the Qiyamah crunch might be conquered and turned into a mosque. Hearing Umar's explanation, Patriarch Sophroninus nodded in admiration. As a tribute in the area of Umar bin Khattab, he prayed in front of the church and a mosque was built. But Umar forbade the call to pray from ringing in the mosque because he was worried that it would hinder the worship rituals of the people in the church. Then, the story of Umar and the Jewish beggar. One of the stories that shows Umar's tolerance is when he meets an old Jew. One day, Umar bin Khattab was walking past a people. He then met an old beggar who seemed to have a facial disturbance. Umar approached the old man and asked, "Sir, which class of book experts are you from?" The old man replied, "Jews." "Why are you doing this beginning?" asked Umar. The old man replied, "I'm beginning so that I can pay the jizya, fulfill my living needs, and my old age makes it impossible for me to work." Umar bin Khattab then took the old man's hand. He led the old man to the residence of Umar and gave him provisions from his house. Then Umar took the old man to the Baitul Mal, but the guard will saying, "Take care of this person and the people like him. By Allah, we are not doing justice because we have eaten up his youth paying jizya. Then we ignore him when he has reached old age." Then, for the fourth point about the implementation of Islamic moderation in classical and contemporary ulama. 1. Implementation of classical moderation. 2. Implementation of liaison moderation. 1. The implementation of classical cleric moderation. After the completion of the Islamic government's move to Damascus, the Islamic belief has a lot of colors. This is because the pattern of local wisdom is assimilated into the Islamic tradition. In addition, the city of Damascus is supported by its leader who has an open nature, namely Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Therefore, the implied message of tolerance grows among the people. Even in the early days of Islamic rule in Damascus, government employees were mostly affiliated with Christians, without being obligated to convert to Islam. The Benin society still believes in the Eastern Christian and Jewish churches. At this time, the Islamic government was also intellectually influenced by the Greeks. Just mentions the name loans Damascus work at the Muawiyah Caliphate. He means a theologian and apologist who has a Syrian mother tongue, is Christian but speaks Greek and Arabic. There is also a Ahdal, the court put who adheres to Jacobi. During the Abbasid dynasty, there was a very famous library called Baitul al-Hikmah. The library was raised by Sultan Harun al-Rashid in Baghdad. In it, some scientific activities take place, starting from the translation of virgin texts into Arabic to research and observation. Sultan Harun always puts the principle of tolerance, and meritocracy over identity. The concrete evidence is that he appointed Ian Shu'abi, an anti-Arab Persian, as the head of the library. Not a few Jews also worked as translators of ancient Greek texts into Hebrew and Arabic in the Baitul al-Hikmah. This historical report shows that the implied message of the tolerance for disparity was present in the region of the Umayyad and Abbasiyah and became a part of the origin of the implementation of Islamic moderation at the time. Then, the implementation of Holistic moderation. In a saga, it is told that when Sunan Ampel visited Majapahit and would pray at the pledge in the kingdom, Sunan Ampel received insult from the guards and village servants. Then an elder of the village named Sanjaya Dirga rebuked him firmly. For those who mocked Sunan Ampel, Sanjaya said, "Hey, don't make fun of other people's worship. Indeed, everyone has a god, and they have their own way of worshipping their god." In addition, the other side of the practice of religion moderation, shown by the guardians in the practice of cultural acculturation, which is reflected in the architectural form of the mosques that they found. The Demak Mosque, for example, which is one of the oldest mosques and also found by these guardians, adopts the Majapahit architectural style, which can be seen from the shape of the roof, mirror of Pundian tirage that serve as examples of the roofs of a number of mosques, such as the Demak Mosque, Cirebon Cipta Rasa Mosque, and others are evidence of the acculturation carried out by the guardians. Another model is the Sunan Kudus teaching, which forbids Muslim people to slaughter a cow when offering a sacrifice in Eid al-Adha or for the purposes of celebration. Instead, Sunan Kudus taught the slaughter of buffalo Jamus in exchange for the cow. This is done to maintain the feeling of Hindus who glorify a cow. Another practice is how Sunan Kudus used the temple buildings such as Hinduism to become a part of the origin of the Holy Mosque Tower, which is then known as the Kudus Tower. Then, the fourth materials is about Islamic principles and their relevance to Maqasid Sharia. There will be three discussion points here. The first point is about the principles of Islamic moderation. They are principles of Islamic moderation, namely tawasud, tawazun, tasamuh, deliberation. Tawasud. Tawasud is defined using the term middle or moderate. Thus, it can be said that people who have moderate behavior do not mean they have soft lenient behavior or have no principle or conviction, but on the contrary, people who have strong conviction. They stand tall in the minds of society, say that what is valid and what is wrong is error, and always struggle to uphold justice and truth. 2. Tawazun. Tawazun can be interpreted as balance. Tawazun or balance honor everything, including the use of the aql protestation, the argument that comes from logic rational mind, and naqli arguments searched from the Quran and Hadith. The principle of moderation here is manifested in the form of a positive balance in all aspects, both in both in terms of belief and practice, both in terms of material and meaningful, worldly or hereafter balance, and so on. Islam balancing the role of divine revelation with human logic and conveying space individually for revelation in logic. On the exclusive life, Islam encouraged the creation of a balance between spirit and reason, between reason and heart, between right with obligation, and so on. Balance or tawazun implies an attitude and movement of moderation. This middle behavior has a commitment to the dilemma of justice, humanity, and equality, and does not mean no opinion. Balance is a form of view that does something in moderation, neither excessive nor less, neither extreme nor liberal. Balance also is a balanced behavior in being solemn for the sake of the creating harmony and relationship between fellow human beings and between humans and good. Tawazun comes from the word tawazunan, which means balance, to has the meaning of giving something of its right without any addition and abstraction. 3. Tasamuh. Tasamuh is usually interpreted using the word tolerance. Tasamuh is rooted in the one word samhan, which has a simple meaning is or is. Dictionary Akbar in Indonesian interpret the word tolerant as follows: is or be tolerant, appreciate, allow, stance, opinions, view, religions, norm, behavior, ethics, out of things or against one's own position. In Islam, tolerance is not justified when applied to the theological realm. Worship is mandatory using rituals and in their respective areas of worship. Belief is belief, so worship using other religions' methods will destroy the essence of belief. Just no tolerance can only be applied to the socialist realm. If word-building tolerance through theological aspects such as prayer and worship along with meaning the ideas they have existed since the era of ignorance and since then have been rejected by the Quran through the letter Al-Kafirun. Firmly, this letter of Al-Kafirun refuses Christians become a holy religion, creed and Sharia. Islam will not pollute it by mixing using other Aqidah and Sharia, and this is not a form of intolerance, because the realm of the tolerant is respecting, not justifying and follow. 4. Shura or Musyawarah. Shura, in the Indonesian meaning, means deliberation. The general sense is the express option at an institution or association that generated from the pattern of thought of each individual is incorporated into the forum era. The concept that is built by Islam is often called such as using democracy means the concept of shura consultation. In one explanation, shura or deliberation is a mutual disclosure, a discussion or asking each other and exchanging opinions about a case. Shura or deliberation means the joints of life in social and state that is model as principle that must be enforced on earth. Shura is a principle which emphasizes that the whole issue of power it can be discussed about the method of deliberation, what need to be made is deliberative institutions, and in them there must be a way of making discussions, how to apply deliberation discussion, as well as other implementation aspects. So the principle of deliberation is Sharia, in particular Prophet Muhammad SAW only consulted about business world friends, sometimes asked what his discussion or opinion is based on revelation, instruction, or his invited. If not on instruction and revelation, then they exercise their right to an opinion. According to Abdul Al-Qadir, all that which is quoted in the book of Sayyoti Pulungan, there are two things that are not occurs in deliberation, namely first questions and already clear order is provision in the Quran and Sunnah. Second, the discussion of the deliberation should not conflict with the orders and legislation in the Quran and Sunnah. In line with the first point, Rashid Ridho states that the material discussed only that does relate to global affairs, not business. For the second point, which is about the understanding of Maqasid Sharia. The term maqasid is the plural form of maqasid, which means purpose and objectives, while sharia means the laws of good, which set for humans in order to be guided to achieve happiness in life, the world, and the hereafter. Ibn Masud defines maqasid sharia as the value or implied message that is the sharia concern in all the contents of the sharia, either bright or global. Maqasid Sharia is one of the important concepts. It is the main topic in Islam. So important that the mujtahid who doing ijtihad must understand it. Maqasid Sharia is simply interpreted as the goal of Sharia. Citing the journal Maqasid al-Sharia, Theory in Islamic Rules written by Ghaffar Siddiq, Imam al-Haramain Anjuwaini emphatically cite the cannot be cited to be able to decide the rules before they really understand the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the order and the embargo. Essentially, the essence of this Maqasid Sharia theory is to create good and avoid evil. Then, for the third point, which is about the relevance of Islamic moderation principle with Maqasid Sharia, there are four. 1. Maqasid Sharia embodies moderation in Sharia. 2. Maqasid Sharia is able to realize moderation in ijtihad and fatwa. If every mujtahid or mufti can properly understand Maqasid Sharia, then the legal products and its ijtihad or fatwa results will realize justice, middle attitude, and proportionalism moderate. 3. Maqasid Sharia embodies moderation in worship. A ulama, da'i, and Muslim will understand and implement worship in Islam in moderation. When he can understand Maqasid Sharia, he will avoid understanding that comes from excessive behavior ghulu when religious, because he understands that the meaning of worship is humble oneself at-tazallul and submit oneself al-hudu to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 4. Maqasid Sharia embodies moderation in mu'amalah. Maqasid Sharia in mu'amalah means to allow all forms mu'amalah, as long as there is no evidence that forbids it. Come from this is where the well-known fiqh rules are born, namely the original law of mu'amalah is amai, unless there is a proposition that forbids it. People who know Maqasid Sharia will be of the view that a matter or dilemma is muamalah with the law may then seek and ensure there is a Sharia argument against the problem this, but from the Quran, the Sunnah, Ijma, and Qiyas. Thank you very much for the attentions. Sorry for my mistakes. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.